They say there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Well, this year was made entirely of those weeks. In 2022, the old order is crumbling. Everywhere got hotter, everyone got poorer, and everything got more expensive. Inflation went global, and in some cases, f***ing cosmic, as the war in Ukraine sunk the world's economy along with Russia's biggest battleship. It was the year of the presidential pool party, as governments across the world struggled to keep the angry masses out of their securely guarded compounds and off the internet. Shut-ins everywhere emerged from their COVID caves with new ideas about the outside world, ideas what they probably got from the computer. The insanities of the previous year were re-evaluated. NFTs, cryptocurrencies, and virtual realities were out, while AI, being real, and pink sauce were in. Ordinary people are taking center stage as TikTok changed what it means to go viral. Legacy media looks less trustworthy, and old-school celebrities are looking like their own wax replica left under a heat lamp. Fresh tech, fresh ideas, and freshly shined scalps threatened the established order, while old debates and long-dead figures made surprising comebacks.
I see good things about Hitler also.
But no matter how fast you run from change, you'll always end up left behind. It is better to stand your ground and understand what you want to run from. And to do that, we have to start at the beginning, in January 2022. In January, the NFT scam finally started running out of steam, as celebrity shills brought the grift to the final demographic that might still fall for it, the octogenarians that still watch network TV. In Kazakhstan, one forward-thinking go-getter got his cash through more legitimate means by driving a bulldozer through his local bank branch. This was a moment among many as protests sparked by the rising cost of gas consumed the entire country. The government attempted several internet shutdowns but failed to prevent online organisation or footage from leaking online, a trend that we'll see continue. In Baltimore, a modified pig heart was transplanted into a human for the first time, which allowed the recipient to live for another 60 days. While over in England, a man with the brain of a dog was still inexplicably holding on for dear life. In Britain, everyone was trying their best to forget COVID ever happened. Nobody as much as Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who was also trying to make us all forget about those midnight rages he was throwing while we had to attend Grandma's funeral via Skype.
I believed implicitly that this was a work event. But, Mr. Speaker,
when the initial findings of an internal report revealed that there may have been more pandemic hoedowns than previously reported, people were angry. One of Boris's own MPs switched sides in disgust, while Johnson initiated Operation Big Dog, a scapegoat talent hunt to find someone close by to shift blame onto. But Big Dog wasn't the only one people were getting mad at for having too much fun. In New York, main character syndrome has been epidemic since Patient Zero arrived. But in January, there was a flare-up among young women who decided that their dating app woes were worthy of national attention.
I feel like it's my duty as your Asian older sister to warn my New York City girls about this Caleb from West Elm ASAP.
This was the West Elm Caleb incident, in which several Brooklyn-based TikTokers took to their phones to air out one man for the heinous crime of hitting and quitting communication.
If this video shows up on your For You page and you happen to be dating a West Elm Caleb, consider yourself warned.
This was like the timeline of her experience with West Elm Caleb was right not, if not overlapping to mine.
I also have a story about West Elm Caleb.
Within a matter of days, his first name and place of work were known across the English-speaking internet, sparking a debate over the ethics of ghosting.
I realized he didn't call, text, or even try to apologize to me, so I said no. The girlies need to know.
You might rightly ask why a British man in his late 20s would give a solitary fuck about this, but I think it's an interesting case study in how TikTok is changing the internet. Unlike veteran platforms where content creators now have decade-long careers, TikTok's content is truly user-generated, and its algorithm can push ordinary, often unwitting people into its spotlight. TikTok is a mob rule reality show, and we're all potential contestants. Meanwhile, an unholy mob of mainstream media organizations were attacking Joe Rogan for sharing his platform with alleged COVID conspiracy theorists. The New York Times got columnists and culturally irrelevant folk singers to pressure Spotify to drop their toe-headed superstar. Joe posted a well-argued response on why alternative viewpoints should be given airtime, even when others see them as dangerous or just disagree with them.
That have been accused of dangerous misinformation. I do not know if they're right. I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a person who sits down and talks to people and has conversations with them. Do I get things wrong? Absolutely, I get things wrong, but I try to correct them.
Just as this condemn-a-thon looked like it was winding down, a compilation of Joe and his guests mispronouncing the name of a certain landlocked African republic, no, not Chad, went viral. In response, Spotify deleted over 100 episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast, forcing Rogan to post a real apology, which he knew was serious because there were books behind him.
I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and shameful thing that I've ever had to talk about publicly.
To those who weren't watching closely, it looked like Joe Rogan might finally be stubbed. After all, celebrities have lost their careers over a lot less. But Spotify held strong, as the media moved on to their next outrage spiral, or onto this suspicious number of Russian soldiers gathering at Ukraine's eastern border. Joe Rogan is a new media star, trusted by his audience not because he knows everything, but because he is honest about what he doesn't know. Legacy media organizations, in contrast, are a black box of corporate interests and metropolitan politics. Joe Rogan's footface is familiar, knowable, and trustworthy as a result. Let me tell you about a comic that I wrote and that you can order right now. Set in a distant future, this sweet cesspool is about a power struggle that erupts among the prisoners of a high-tech slave colony, run by an army of robot guards and a sadistic warden who only appears to the inmates as a friendly holographic dog. For the last 6 months, I have been building a business from the ground up and have hired a team of artists whose work I love so that I can tell this story exactly how I think it should be told. It's got brains, it's got beans, and it's got some strange, stupefying concepts that I came up with in the shower. So check it out at justordinarythings.com and dip your toes in this sweet cesspool.
I was Josh Safdie's muse when he wrote Uncut Gems.
Right.
In February, some doofus left his £400 gold cube in Central Park, a cryptocurrency promo stunt that ended up being more hype than heft. The company, formerly known as Facebook, saw its share price take a historic plunge, following a bad earnings report and changes in Apple's rules on targeted ads. The Zuckerborg might not have noticed, though, because he was waiting for at least one other person to log into his head-mounted Wii Sports wank realm. Over in Canada, a few thousand truck drivers were getting horny and occasionally a bit hatey. Oh, Canada! Yes, this was the Freedom Convoy, a large-scale protest against vaccine mandates for border-crossing truck drivers, who demonstrated by blocking said borders. The issue-focused movement that started in January quickly evolved into a wider protest against all COVID restrictions and a free-week party in downtown Ottawa. Jerry cans, food, and other supplies kept the party going for anyone who was just there for the vibes. The mostly peaceful and long-running nature of the protest meant it cast a wide cultural net, catching every clout-chasing crazy north of New York State. While many of the convoy's organizers were balls deep in the QAnon cornhole, a lot of protesters were vaccinated and just objected to the idea that they should be mandated. Sure, there were some folks flying them Kanye colors, but protests are a lot like parties. The more people you invite, the better the chance of someone shitting on your sofa. Unsurprisingly, the real party pooper was Justin Trudeau, who has a documented history of bringing the mood down. Canada's Prime Minister invoked emergency powers that hadn't been used since their creation in the 1980s, enacting mass arrests and clearing the country's borders. GoFundMe cut off organisers from the funds that the movement had raised, leading to some legitimate questions about how online platforms play favourites with politics. By the morning of February 13th, a joint police force cleared the Ambassador Bridge and opened the border's busiest crossing. Meanwhile, on the Ukrainian border with Russia, things were just starting to get crowded. Russian forces had been gathering at Ukraine's border for a while, but in February, thousands more arrived, with tanks and heavy equipment in an obvious escalation. Many Western pundits and geopolitical big dogs were still sure that Russia was bluffing. I mean, it's not like they've ever done anything like this before. Well, there was that one time in 1708, and 1783, and 1795, 1919, 1922, and 2014, but other than those times, totally unprecedented. Though things did look uncertain during those first frosty weeks of February. I mean, did Putin have the stones to invade Ukraine? The man couldn't even handle being in breathing distance of a French guy, which, you know, fair. Still, the American government were sure an invasion was imminent, jumping the gun by setting the likely date of February 16th. The day came and went, giving cable news pundits an opportunity to score some political points instead of doing a journalism.
If Putin bluffed an invasion of Ukraine to make Biden look ridiculous, it worked.
If you were actually looking at what was happening on the ground, though, it was clear that the war had already started. TikTok was filled with a procession of Russian tanks and heavy equipment headed to Ukraine, while Russian state media stooges posted videos apparently showing evidence of Ukrainian aggression on the border. In one of many, a faceless Polish-speaking Ukrainian saboteur is shown allegedly firing at civilian infrastructure, with the metadata on the video revealing that the gunfire was copy and pasted from another YouTube video. Having manufactured their opposition, Russia invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February, starting a chain of disastrous global consequences that are still in motion. In the Black Sea, the Russian Navy's flagship ordered Ukrainian soldiers stationed at Snake Island to surrender, who responded and spoke for all of us. This mood of bold resistance in the face of a larger, stronger enemy was demonstrated throughout Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky stayed put in Kiev as Russian bombs landed in the capital, while the country's farmers towed Russian tanks and sold them for scrap metal. That quick trip to Kiev that Putin imagined failed to materialize, as his special military operation started to look more like the beginning of a long, punishing war. Didn't arrive in time for the last video, but here it is, my Bayraktar plushie. March was quite a month, as the spectre of nuclear war sent everyone searching for some pop culture distractions to keep us spiraling into self-harm. Didn't we deserve a break? Didn't we deserve a hero? One brave knight answered that call, a one William Smith, who rose from his chair to deliver the bitch slap heard around the world. The internet's greatest bards retold the tale of brave Sir William, the man who defended the honor of his maiden's big baldy head and slayed the fiendish rock.
It's a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
I'm going to, okay? Okay.
The shock of the slap distracted everyone and also somehow erased the ceremony's Best Picture winner from Earth's collective consciousness. Pretty sure it was Morbius. Simultaneously, while Russian oligarchs living on tax break island were finally made to feel truly British as the government took all their money and gave them fuck all in return.
Imposing sanctions against us here just create enormous pressure for us personally.
Oligarch assets were frozen, their secret offshore accounts were suddenly not so secret, and their super yachts were impounded. One oligarch had his multi-million-dollar mansion occupied, not by the government, but by a bunch of stinky squatters. Of course, all this was very interesting, but what did it mean for the footy? Longtime owner of Chelsea Football Club, Roman Abramovich, had his assets frozen, while the team was briefly banned from selling tickets to games, forcing Chelsea fans to beat their wives and lick batteries at home rather than at their ugly office block stadium. Fuck Chelsea, up the seagulls. Simultaneously, it seemed no one had told China that the world had moved on to its next crisis. Xi Jinping doubled down on China's zero-COVID strategy, putting it at odds with the western half of this nearly sphere. After detecting just 66 cases of COVID-19, the CCP locked down the tech capital of Shenzhen. In Europe, approximately 1/4 of Ukraine's total population fled their homes, with millions seeking refuge in the rest of Europe. Maybe some of them moved in next to me. I wouldn't have noticed because I was too busy spending every hour that God gave me playing Elden Ring. I didn't release a video in March, or for most of April, because every morning I was getting my maidenless ass up and exploring the lands between. Now, I'm not very good at video games, so while the internet was bragging about soloing the hardest boss with a jug on their head, I was still being told to put my foolish ambitions to rest. But the game's punishing difficulty made every following moment feel so hard-won. Being transported to parts of the map you weren't ready for or didn't even know existed set up these stunning, unexpected moments of discovery that felt totally organic. In my personal ranking, Elden Ring is the best single-player game of all time, taking top position from Half-Life 2, which it's held since 2004. For a few hours a day in March, I was totally transported away from the horrors of a rapidly collapsing world by exploring a beautiful virtual one that had already been destroyed. And it wasn't until writing that sentence that I realized how fantastically ironic that was. In April, the revival of r/place showed us that the internet can work together and create something beautiful, unless you're Canadian. In his latest bid to force the internet to play with him, Elon Musk threatened to buy Twitter in a funny 420 jokey joke that was boring long before it got serious. And it did get serious later in the month when the richest man in the world secured funding from Morgan Stanley, a Saudi prince, and a subsidiary of Qatar's sovereign wealth fund to buy the fucking Bird app. Elon said this was all about his commitment to free speech and had nothing to do with that teenager tracking his private jet. Back in the Black Sea, Ukrainian forces partially sunk the Russian Navy's flagship, or if you believe Russian media, it caught fire and sunk all on its own. The sinking served as a perfect symbol for how Putin's campaign was going generally, which means we won't have to talk about Ukraine again, at least not until September. Speaking of dead in the water, the market for NFTs was on a steep decline. A long time coming for an entire economic ecosystem based on the tech behind the I Am Very Rich app. The scam took about a year longer than I thought it would to run its course, and it looked like the crypto market was heading in the same direction. But according to Bloomberg, the crypto Christ was already walking among us. You see, this 30-year-old billionaire was going to save crypto and the whole damn world at the same time.
The guy you see next to me is the most generous billionaire in the world.
Sam Bankman-Fried, or SBF, the CEO of FTX. You might have heard about him from their high-budget commercials, where celebrities like Larry David and Tom Brady set fire to their reputations to promote his crypto exchange.
You just need FTX!
According to Forbes, Bloomberg, and other financial institutions that you can pay to regurgitate your company's PR in the form of clickbait, Sam was a humble super genius. You could tell he was humble because he slept on a beanbag, and you could tell he was a genius because he had enough brain RAM to play League of Legends and make video calls simultaneously. In April, Sam took a break from Runeterra, inviting his celebrity buddies and the world's biggest crypto whales to the Bahamas.
What's up, guys? I'm here with my boy Sam from FTX. We're at Crypto Bahamas Conference. We're going to start the day. We're going to do some TikToks for you guys, and it's going to be an amazing day. We'll get started. We'll do a get ready with me.
Also, Steve Aoki was there. The White Knight of crypto moved to the Bahamas to build FTX's $60 million headquarters, where he hosted the heaviest hitters in paid public speaking. Basically, the world leaders who are too young to die but have lived long enough without a real job to need the cash. Tony War Crimes Blair and Splooge McFuck were there to sing the praises of the sensible and generous SBF. Cable news called him the next JP Morgan. YouTubers made him seem like some kind of blockchain Gandhi, in that he was vegan, dressed like shit, and just wanted everyone to get along. Sam's vocal support of crypto regulation and apparent commitment to philanthropy bolstered his reputation, proving that a reputation is a lot like an intangible digital currency. It can be bought and sold, and it only really has value if enough people believe in it.
My dog stepped on a bee.
In May, a very real cash crisis nearly reached critical mass when Sri Lanka declared a state of emergency. The country was running out of petrol, so massive anti-government protests filled the streets of Colombo for weeks. But nobody on the western side of this irregularly shaped ellipsoid was paying attention, because they were watching cable news and Twitch streamers covering the trial of the year.
we've had cocaine together maybe a couple of times.
With Marilyn Manson?
I mean, what does it matter, though?
I once gave Marilyn Manson a pill so that he would stop talking so much.
Yes, this was the Depp-Heard defamation trial. I didn't watch it, but I watched the internet watch it, which I thought was very interesting, if a little bit sort of fucky. In one way, it was nothing new. Trials have served as public entertainment since the witch-burning days. But now that this witch has been well and truly cooked, my cold take is that the whole thing was a sorry spectacle. The biggest insight I got from it was that the lives of Hollywood celebrities are just as sad, pathetic and insular as my own. Both Depp and Heard were labelled as abusers, but the label stuck to Heard like shit on bedsheets, as her apparently inauthentic testimony was transformed into TikTok dynamite.
My dog stepped on a bee.
My child spilled my tea.
My yard's full of debris.
Live just by the sea? Oh shit!
Viewers seem to feel sorry for Johnny Depp, probably because he now looks like everyone's sad aunt. The actual legal trial was about defamation, but the trial of public opinion seemed to be about whether Amber Heard was a bitch or not. Twitch streamers covered the trial day to day, offering viewers the exact level of righteous vitriol they wanted to hear.
That Ms. Heard acted with actual malice. Answer, yes.
Holy! That's hardcore!
That Ms. Heard acted with actual malice. Answer, yes.
True!
Question. The statement was about Mr. Depp.
Please stop spamming.
Answer, yes.
Turd pack
Question.
R.I.P. Bozo,
The
because
statement
I
was
can't
false.
help but laugh.
2020, article of the Daily Mail. Quote, we've reached the beginning of...
June was relatively quiet, but things did get a little scary when the machines made their first attempt to take all our jobs. The artist is dead and AI has killed him, as DALL-E's deep learning models generated some computer art that was as impressive as it was repetitive. The internet was dazzled by the incredible images it could create by mashing two or more pre-existing concepts together in 9-frame capture puzzles. Click the boxes which contain the muscular teapots? Nice try, Skynet, you're terminated. On June 11th, TikTok user Veronica Shaw showed the world some weird guns she found in her shower that she planned to sell as food. It probably won't cause botulism, but it's definitely not approved by the FDA because it's food, not drugs.
What do you mean FDA approved? I don't sell medical products. The pink sauce is not a medical product.
Oh, hey, and I'm at Binley Baked Chippy. It's an absolute staple here in Coventry.
And in the UK, an oversized roadside chip shop went viral, inspiring teenagers and clout-chasing influencers to make their pilgrimage to Binley Mega Chippy.
Binley Mega Chippy!
Once again, the TikTok algorithm drove action, galvanizing users to look up from their phones and explore the world, as long as they could record it on their phone and in vertical.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
In July, things heated up again, as people were mad and they weren't gonna take it anymore. Protests in Sri Lanka finally reached boiling point as crowds stormed the presidential palace and cannonballed into the presidential pool, forcing widespread government resignations and a total change to the order of the country.
I'm not taking down that tweet or acknowledging that my tweet violated the Twitter rules.
Jordan Peterson was banned from Twitter after a creepy comment about Elliot Page's chest, the latest in a line of over-intellectualized, tit-based takes, like when he declared the inability to appreciate fat boobies was of deep moral consequence. Peterson responded to the ban by donning his best suit and telling the woke moralists that no, they were the ones who were triggered, and he wasn't going to stop crying until they admitted it. Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, people were getting angry about something that actually mattered. In a nightmare for the Dutch government and a dream come true for neurodiverse 5-year-olds, there were tractors as far as the eye could see on the roads around Amsterdam. Dutch farmers protested government proposals to shut down thousands of factory farms in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, specifically nitrogen emissions. Hay bales were set aflame, animal shit was dumped on highways, and supermarket distribution centres were blockaded. The farmers just wanted some respect, god dang it, and rightly so. As the tiny European nation is the second largest exporter of agricultural products in the world, just behind the much larger US. In a year where Europe's breadbasket was overturned, the importance of agricultural exporters cannot be overstated. They are keeping the world fed. For anyone who thinks the war in Ukraine is just a local crisis, you need to look at global supply chains for food and fuel. These are the ties that bind. In a world of global trade, there is no such thing as a local crisis. In July, the rising cost of food sent net importers like Ghana into civil unrest. This all reveals an uncomfortable truth that if you care about the environment, the long-term battle against greenhouse gas emissions will demand sacrifice. And that sacrifice will likely be made by the poorest and the unwilling. Anyway, that's a little bit too much moral complexity for this video, so let's look at some funny boys in suits instead. In late July, a new TikTok trend swept America as young men got dressed up to go see the new Minions movie. The gentle Minions phenomenon was either a mass hysteria spread by teenagers discovering what irony meant, or just another viral trend. But I think it said something about the cinema's relationship with the internet, the invention that's eating it alive. When DVD sales declined and fell off a cliff during the 2010s, Hollywood lost a huge revenue stream, especially for mid-budget original features aimed at adults, as Matt Damon explained this year during a viral clip from his Hot Ones interview.
And so the movies that we used to make, you could afford to not make all of your money when it played in the theater because you knew you had the DVD coming behind the release, and 6 months later you'd get a whole nother chunk. It would be like reopening the movie almost.
Hollywood's solution to their revenue problem was to stop making films and start making intellectual property, relying on recognizable brands and then sucking them dry like some kind of monster that sucks blood, like a Sauron or something. In a cinematic landscape made mostly of sequels, prequels, and spin-offs, meme culture pokes fun at Hollywood's inauthenticity. It's Morbin Time was an ironic celebration of a film that no one asked for and most thought was shit. At least with the gentle Minions, these kids were having a good time at the cinema, a progressively rare occurrence. Now look, I love the cinema, but I am finding fewer and fewer reasons to go there. The only things I saw and actually enjoyed this year were a sad Irish film, a sad English film, a sad Norwegian film, and Nope, which fucking slapped. Nope rocked, for real, for real.
It's not brave for you to carry on doing this. I think, in my view, you're hurting the country, Prime Minister, just on a very human level. Surely you must know that it's in the country's interest for you to leave now, isn't it?
I think that the country's going through tough times.
By late July, it was finally time to slip a few too many sleepy pills into Big Dog's food bowl. It started a month before when Johnson's Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, was accused of groping two men in a West London nightclub. He offered his resignation, but Johnson refused to suspend him from the Conservative Party. A spokesman at Downing Street declared that Johnson was unaware of any accusations against Pincher when he was appointed in February. A few days later, that turned out to be bollocks.
So do you accept it was a grave error to appoint Chris Pincher to your government?
Yes, I think it was a mistake, and I apologise for it. I think in hindsight it was the wrong thing to do.
4 more allegations against Pincher were made, including that he had previously groped 2 Conservative MPs. And apparently, Big Dog had already known all about this, allegedly referring to his Deputy Chief Whip as Pincher by name, Pincher by nature. This revelation was offered by Dominic Cummings, another scandal magnate who probably knew a thing or two about embarrassing last names. Soon the writing was on the wall as dozens of Conservative MPs sent letters of no confidence into the 1922 committee.
You're not going to learn any lessons and you're not going to change. You're not capable of changing. We'll be doing this again, time and time again, if you stay in post, won't you?
Coming to this committee? I will. Yes, I will. I hope very much to be,
what
to be invited.
anyone with a functioning sense of shame might have realised it was time to go. But Big Dog refused to budge. As even more letters streamed in, it was starting to look like the most humane thing to do was to take him outside and just do him Old Yeller style. The BBC went from barely contained shock to boredom, as Boris longed out the inevitable.
He led in 2016 until this very moment. You just now get that sort of sense of the time, his leadership ebbing away, his prime ministership and his leadership of the Conservative Party.
When he finally announced that he was leaving, it was with all the grace and decorum of the last guy to leave a house party at 5 a.m.
And to you, the British public, I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But them's the breaks.
In August, more titans would be toppled and others would rise in their place. But not in the case of these Chinese tower blocks, as the collapse of China's real estate market got literal. Ruined developers demolished unsold skyscrapers instead of paying for the cost of keeping them up. Over in Iraq, there was yet another politically significant pool party, as agitators stormed the presidential palace to protest state corruption. While age-old internet oddity and most over-documented human ever, Christine Chandler, was arrested for crimes too yucky to talk about.
Christian, what's up?
But August belonged to another viral attention addict, one who got a great deal more out of his fame. Over the previous 12 months, Andrew Tate had tamed the viral machine. You could say he made the Matrix his bitch. He was all over TikTok's For You page like a slimy rash. His ability to shout, say the inexcusable and then rationalize it in an amusing way appealed to millions of young men. And so too did his lifestyle. He had everything a young man might want. Fast cars, fighting ability, and a fast mouth that he could apply to any situation. And lots of money, which he was mostly getting from his admirers. With Hustler University, Andrew Tate had built an army of rubes who were willing to pay for the opportunity to make him the internet's main character. Unlike traditional MLMs that sell protein powder or whatever, Hustler University mostly sold tater tots, fragments of Tate. Podcast clips, YouTube bits, and Instagram rants were churned through the TikTok algorithm by members of his affiliate marketing program. His brand was perfect for the platform because he hooked you in with some outrageous statement and you just had to stick around to see where he took it. It's sort of the same reason that this thing keeps popping up at the moment. Can you figure out why? Because I fucking can't, and that's the idea. It's engagement bait. The TikTok algorithm works by letting what holds people's attention filter to the top. But with Tate, it was more than that. His philosophy appealed to young men, and to ignore that completely is to render yourself stupider. Figures have been pulling this trick for centuries. There's a reason they call them confidence men. What was new was the speed at which this trick worked, as the new viral landscape is moving faster than ever before. Tate flaunts his money and how many women he does sex on to give a glimpse of a lifestyle that appeals to men who dream of control over their finances and females. My actual hot take is that a man like Tate was inevitable in a cultural landscape that does sometimes encourage men to be ashamed of their masculinity. But the simplicity of telling someone how to be a man will always appeal, especially to those who maybe didn't have someone in their life to tell them how to do it. Which is why I'm saying, don't look to Andrew Tate to tell you how to be a man when you can listen to my dad, a real righteous dude that I'm going to embarrass right now. Andrew Tate sells money, lust, and power. But my dad would tell you that's just surface level shit. Real men go after success, love, and responsibility. I know the difference seems subtle, but it's important. Work hard, learn to take responsibility for your actions, and make sure the people around you know how you feel about them. That is what being a man is all about. September was a big month for queuing, as people lined up to dine, dawdle, and die. On the 21st of September, Vladimir Putin announced that he was running out of real soldiers and would soon start recruiting them from the parts of Russia that were unlikely to organize large-scale opposition. The Russian Federation's partial mobilization recruited thousands of civilians for the war in Ukraine, many of whom were greeted with rusty weapons and ratchet sleeping conditions. While in Moscow, Putin and pals hosted a rally populated by bussed-in public sector workers, whose applause had to be added in post.
Бойся! Мы идем! Гойда! Гойда! Немцами! Сатанистами! Бойся! Мы идем! Гойда! Гойда!
Earlier in the month, the record for most burgers sold in a day was smashed inside New Jersey's American Dream Mall. 20,000 punters queued patiently for a hot slab of Mr. Beast branded beef. While in Britain, 250,000 people queued for days just to walk past a single box containing a cold slab of royal beef. And they didn't even get to look inside, although at least one guy gave it a go. The Queen died as she lived, in insane, old-timey opulence at great cost to the British taxpayer. Lizzie Windsor remained a conspicuous background character in the upper echelons of power for 60 years. A lifetime reservation at the front row of history meant she got to rub shoulders with everyone, from Obama to Churchill, from Marilyn Monroe to what's her name? Oh yeah, she's the new Prime Minister. With Boris out of the job, he was succeeded by Liz Truss.
Conference rebelled.
A woman so underwhelming that the Queen decided to die just 2 days after meeting her.
We are growing wheat more competitively than the Canadian prairies.
This is so awkward.
September might have been a busy month for history, but it was an even busier month for cheating scandals in esoteric sports. Something was definitely fishy in the great state of Ohio as a Lake Erie fishing tournament came to a close. 2 anglers were caught hook, line, and sinker when competition officials found their would-be winners were stuffed with lead balls. The moment they were caught was recorded in this mighty viral confrontation where it looked like the cheaters would be strung up alongside their fish.
We got weights and fish! There we go!
There was also this poker palaver, where the result of a 269,000 hand at Hustler Casino shocked players and commentators alike.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Wow. I want to see. Does she have Jack 4?
She got 4 jackpot.
What?
Whoa!
Look at
Whoa! What the fuck?
Newcomer Robbie Jade Lou embarrassed regular Garrett Adelstein with a hero call that some thought was so unlikely that foul play was a foregone conclusion.
Jacob, you look like you want to kill me. I'm not Jacob. I'm like, you look like you want to kill me, Jared.
Wow.
Garrett would directly accuse Robbie of cheating on Twitter, suggesting she was using some kind of vibrating device and stream-watching accomplice to send her signals. Robbie also returned the money she won from Garrett, fueling online speculation of her guilt. Though Hustler Casino later released an investigation that found no evidence of wrongdoing. I've tried my best to suss out the scandal myself, but I don't really understand poker, and I kept getting distracted by Robbie's enormous sunglasses. But all this speculation about a vibrating device probably emanated from another high-profile cheating scandal that continues to throb the chess world into fits of hysteria today. It started with one match in August, a 4-game skirmish between universally loved chess world superstar Magnus Carlsen and a stroppy 19-year-old streamer named Hans Niemann.
How am I this good?
But these two were soon engaged in a larger ongoing battle beyond the board. During the illustrious FTX Crypto Cup in August, Hans scored a surprise victory in his first game against the reigning champ, before losing the next 3, which occurred after he refused to give a customary post-game dissection in this viral clip.
Hans, yesterday was a terrible day for you, and today you start out with a masterpiece. How would you summarize it?
Chess speaks for itself.
The game might speak for itself, but Niemann had built his reputation by speaking out of turn.
You can hear me! Chat, we're playing Magnus! We're playing Magnus Carlsen!
Gloating when victorious and self-pitying in defeat, Niemann was famous for his incredible skill and stratospheric rise, but also for throwing tantrums on stream.
What? Oh! How is he so smart?
You could say he was a bit of a drama queen. A total contrast to magnanimous Magnus. A grandmaster at 13, he was worshipped by the community as the Mozart of chess. Now 32, Magnus is the chess world man wonder, worth $50 million thanks to lucrative deals with luxury brands and chess.com. Chess YouTubers fight over every crumb that falls from his lips. His name is synonymous with modern competitive chess. He is their uncontested king. But that reputation was put into check during his match against Niemann on September 4th, where he was defeated in what has become the most overanalyzed game in chess history.
It must be embarrassing for the world champion to lose to me.
The following day, Magnus tweeted this coded reaction to his loss, accusing Niemann of cheating without actually saying it.
Yeah, he has withdrawn.
Wait, what's going on? Oh my gosh, we have a tweet?
This fueled online speculation about how Niemann could have possibly cheated, with Elon Musk spreading the most viral accusation that Hans was getting his next move delivered to him from within. Niemann was in an uncomfortable position. He was being psyched out. Whatever his next move was, it would be a difficult one. On September 19th, the two would face off again in an online tournament where Magnus made just one move before resigning and shutting off his webcam.
But everything else is still
sorry,
up in the
Alejandro.
air.
Sorry, Alejandro. I just have to interrupt you because the game started and Magnus has logged off. What has happened?
Magnus has resigned.
For the world champion, I thought this was pretty unsportsmanlike, but that's not the way the internet saw it. After Magnus's coded and then more direct accusations against a 19-year-old, the powerful pieces in the world of chess converged around Magnus, protecting their king.
Something's not quite right with Hans Niemann.
I'm actually very, very worried about the future of chess going forward.
This is really, really bad.
Hikaru Nakamura, arguably the biggest chess streamer on the planet, amplified these accusations.
I don't even need to show variations, you just look at the position. Like, okay, let's say, okay.
What? While smaller streamers dissected every piece of footage there was, finding suspicion in his every twitch and swallow.
Yeah, he swallowed something.
Hans, for his part, put up a pretty shoddy defense, admitting to cheating in online games when he was 12. When chess.com released a 70-page report that detailed how Hans had cheated in hundreds of online games when he was a young teenager, many saw this as the smoking gun. But was it? The same report admitted that there was still no hard evidence that Hans had ever cheated in an over-the-board game, or in any recent competitive online play. But it's been hard for Hans to shake the rumors that he was benefiting from anally inserted artificial intelligence because, well, they were funny, but also because he acted like a total dildo. He was a convenient villain that observers love to hate. Whereas Magnus has spent over a decade building a reputation with legions of fans and corporate sponsors to support him. His name means something to the international game, especially to chess.com, who had made an offer to buy his chess training company a week before his highly public loss. This called into question the motivation behind chess.com's damning report, and many no longer believe the scandal is so clear-cut. October was a month for shake-ups. Leaders were deposed and installed, the young raged against the old, and the old demolished the ancient. Elon Musk finally arrived at Twitter HQ in a punny prop comedy set piece to take control of the company. Musk promptly fired around 3,700 employees, which led to millions of tweeters to tweet that Twitter was over on Twitter. Just Stop Oil painted the town orange in a series of attention-grabbing protests against fossil fuel production, where two girls tossed some soup at a pane of glass that just so happened to be protecting a famous painting, inspiring copycat glass smudgers and red-faced indignation from climate change skeptics and very sensible people who debated whether this was the right kind of protest we should be doing while doing fuck all themselves. And what's-her-name resigned after just 7 weeks, becoming Britain's shortest-serving Prime Minister and the hardest answer to a pub trivia question in 2056. However, I'd argue that Liz Truss achieved so much in her 44 days in office that she didn't need a 45th. During her prime ministerial speedrun, she spoke at the Queen's funeral, went on a school trip to the UN, nuked the value of the pound, stabbed her closest ally in the back, and broke her party's key manifesto promise not to lift a ban on fracking. This led to an aggressive showdown in the Houses of Parliament and anger in her own party, best exemplified when one of her own MPs was quoted on German TV.
Meant mit den Worten verließ, I'm fucking furious and I don't fucking care anymore.
The writing was on the wall for the British Prime Minister for the second time this year, except this time the wall was on fire and the words "you're fucked" were written on it in human shit. The Daily Star's YouTube channel went viral when they pitted a head of lettuce against the Prime Minister to see who'd last longer. Inevitably, the lettuce pulled ahead as Thingy-mabob attempted to project confidence in her final speech before announcing her resignation.
I am a fighter and not a quitter.
The toast-headed leader of the opposition even got a successful jab in there, finally landing a joke for the first time in his career.
A book is being written about the Prime Minister's time in office. Apparently, it's going to be out by Christmas. Is that the release date or the title?
That biography did eventually come out, with a final line that I think sums up the whole fucking mess. There were tears among Truss's Downing Street staff at her resignation, but she reassured them, and herself, with these words: "Don't worry, I'm relieved it's over. At least I've been Prime Minister." Meanwhile, in China, Xi Jinping was schooling world leaders everywhere on how to show 1.4 billion people you're still the boss. In a one-party system with no tolerated opposition, the best thing you can do is kick your predecessor out on his decrepit arse. Yes, this was Big Xi cementing his precedent-busting third term as the General Secretary of the Communist Party. The party itself also bucked tradition by declining to release China's annual key economic data, probably because it was so good it would just embarrass the other countries. We'll check in on China next month, but first, Iran. The Iranian regime has been putting out fires and murdering protesters for decades, but 2022 ignited the regime's most existential threat to date. On September 17th, protesters gathered at the funeral of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who'd been killed in police custody after an arrest for refusing to cover her head. Within a week, this had spiraled into a nationwide protest movement in at least 15 of Iran's 31 provinces, despite attempts by the regime to shut down the mobile internet. Mahsa's name became one of the most viral hashtags of the year, as Iranian women led the movement into October and beyond. The protest quickly developed into a wider revolt against the government and the Guidance Patrol, the vice squad thugs that force Iranian women to cover their hair and suppress the country's freedom generally. In unprecedented displays, schoolgirls marched in the street shouting anti-government slogans as others ejected education officials from their school. The government's internet curfew failed to suppress organization, while state television was briefly hacked to show an image of the country's supreme leader in the crosshairs. Workers in the country's vital energy sector went on strike as oil industry employees chanted for the downfall of a dictator. This was a serious omen for the regime, as the revolution that brought them to power was also the culmination of mass protests and strikes by oil workers. In reaction, the government cracked down harder, shooting protesters and conducting mass arrests. But viral footage of state violence and the martyrdom of more young victims inspired renewed resistance and greater fury. I have to stop here, partly because of the rigid, month-based system I've chained myself to, but also because this is still a developing story. No one knows where this movement might take Iran. But what I can say for sure is that the regime's attempt to censor footage and stamp out online organization has completely failed. Information wants to be free, and so do the people who courageously act upon what they learn. At the risk of getting a little too sincere for a minute, I just want to say, I love Iran, its culture, its history, its food, and its people, and I pray for their freedom. All right, on to the next month.
Hello, Dubai. I am so honored to be projecting on the Burj Khalifa.
November was a bad month to be a brand, as Rihanna's 5 head was projected incorrectly on the Burj Khalifa in an ill-fated Fendi promotion. Balenciaga were in hot water when they released promotional photos that looked less like an advert for their ugly price-gouged garments and more like one for, cheese pizza? The luxury brand's shallow attempt to appear like they were courting controversy backfired when it actually became controversial. Influencers burnt their merchandise in a bonfire of the vanities that would have been cool if it weren't revealing that they'd bought that shit in the first place.
This is for you, Balenciaga. I'm burning all of my t-shirts that I used to love. Thousands of dollars worth of t-shirts gone. I am done with this brand.
Back at Twitter, users abused Elon's pay-to-play blue tick system in order to impersonate people and brands. Everyone from Nintendo to Ben Shapiro were in the firing line. But the most beautiful act of online corporate sabotage came from this user who borrowed the identity of big pharma brand Eli Lilly to announce that insulin would be free for all. The company's shares took a battering the following day, wiping billions from their market cap. But that was chump change compared to what was going on at FTX. After a negotiation between Binance and FTX fell through, the third largest crypto exchange in the world went bust.
It appears like there's been a genuine commingling of the funds that are of FTX customers that were not supposed to be commingled with your separate firm.
I didn't knowingly commingle funds.
Customer funds from the exchange had been siphoned out to Alameda Research, run by SBF's hedge fund XGF, Caroline Ellison. And look, I'm not gonna flog a dead horse, so I'll just say it turned out that these two were swapping more than everyone's money around. Yes, they were the core couple in the polycule that took down crypto. Turns out the guy who was giving away all of his money was giving away all of your money, and a big chunk of it was going to the Democrats, with a few wads stuffed into Republican wallets for good measure. Kevin O'Leary was thrown to the sharks for accepting $15 million to become a spokesman for the now bankrupt exchange. All of this seems obvious in hindsight, but the signs were there. You should never trust a fat vegan. They're always hiding something. Sam tried to calm the storm, but failed to calm himself, shaking in his interview seat either from fear or a protein deficiency. While many of the company's media stooges initially gave Sam an easy ride, the internet's unfiltered rage showed where public sentiment really stood. Back in China, things went from zero COVID to zero chill real fucking quick, as mass demonstrations against COVID restrictions spread across the country. A worker-led revolt in a major Foxconn iPhone factory began in Zhengzhou after employees were barred from leaving the site. Many had already fled or quit, fearing the possibility of being kept in the cramped corporate dorm-style quarantine facility. Foxconn hired seasonal workers to replace the missing, but they ended up being paid less than they were promised by the government, which instigated the revolt. Footage from the factory spread across Chinese social media faster than the censors could block it. In a country that had spent the last year laboring under a collapsing economy and progressively high-tech repression tactics, the rage of the Foxconn factory workers proved infectious. Many Chinese citizens have been subject to daily testing, fearing the label of a red QR code, which could leave them locked in their own home or sent to one of the country's terrifying quarantine gulags. Aggressive confrontations between hazmat heavies and ordinary people were recorded in dozens of cities, while the WeChat censorship machine couldn't keep up with the sheer number of videos which were also surfacing beyond the Great Firewall. And this was all happening while the FIFA World Cup was airing, showing the maskless masses of the world enjoying their freedom in the famously free state of Qatar. Protesters tore down this COVID testing booth in Lanzhou, sending a pretty clear message, while crowds in Shanghai bravely targeted their anger at the party and the big man himself. By the time a quarantine center was burnt down in early December, it looked like the Communist Party had got the message. The last month of the year was far from quiet, as several stories reached their exciting conclusions as others threatened to keep on going until we're all fucking dead. The artist, currently known as Yadolf, jumped out the Overton window on InfoWars, declaring his love for Hitler and making Alex Jones sound like the voice of reason. Over in Germany, things were getting even more Hitlerian, as police arrested 25 men for plotting to overthrow the government. The 50-man Reichsbürger group planned to install their 71-year-old king as the new Führer in some kind of caring home coup.
Hello everyone, this is Donald Trump. Hopefully your favorite president of all time, better than Lincoln, better than Washington.
In a relatively quiet year for America's own failed geriatric coup leader, Donald Trump used December to gift his loyal followers with a set of $99 NFTs. Upon release, the digital Trump trading cards immediately netted a sale of $3.9 million, which might cover some of the former president's 2023 legal fees. Back in the Bahamas, SBF got effed in the B as he was finally arrested on charges of fraud, money laundering, and campaign finance violations. After spending a few days in a Bahamian jail, Sam has decided not to contest his extradition to the US, where he could face up to 115 years behind bars. Crypto has probably faded as the tech fad on trend, as artificial intelligence looks set to be the sticky buzzword to attract venture capital wasps in 2023. ChatGPT wowed everyone in December as it produced original writing tasks with terrifying ease. Whether it's just machine learning Mad Libs or the tech to upend disparate professions from coding to creative writing remains to be seen. And Elon Musk finally got bored of his new toy, putting up a poll asking whether he should quit as chief twat. This followed 2 agonizing months of Elon's self-installation as Twitter's main character. When Elon ventured outside his $44 billion echo chamber, he was booed for a full 5 minutes when Dave Chappelle brought him on stage during a stand-up show. This experience must have had an effect on the world's most sensitive billionaire, as days later he was banning accounts left and right. Starting with the teenager legally tracking his flight, moving on to anyone posting links to competing social media sites, and finally onto journalists who questioned his methods. This embarrassing series of suspensions completely undercut the idea that Elon was reclaiming Twitter in the name of free speech. Back in China, it looked like Big Xi was forced to reverse course as the country looked to slowly abandon zero COVID and embrace COVID 100. The iconic Guangzhou Tower displayed this message, putting the people's health into their own hands. But with a working population in steep decline and the threat of an overwhelmed healthcare system, expect to see more woe and rage in modern China. I want to finish this year on a relatively obscure event. On December 10th, 2022, 200 people dressed all in white invaded and disabled the Lafarge cement plant in France, an act of mass, organised eco-vandalism that saw figures sabotage incinerators and cut cables. The cement plant is one of the biggest atmospheric polluters and producers of CO2 in the country. I saw this and, well, it just gave me a funny feeling that we'll be seeing more of this kind of thing in the next year. 2022 was the year of the crowd. After a great isolation, humankind has embraced the power of collective action and comfort in numbers. Man is the social animal. It's what got us into this mess in the first place, and things are only going to get messier. This year, I think, has laid the foundation for the next 10. It's going to be a bumpy ride, and statistically speaking, not all of you will survive. But I can guarantee you it's going to be interesting. Now for the part of the video where I make some baseless predictions about 2023, and we'll meet right back here this time next year, and we'll see how many I got right. Okay, price of oil keeps going down, fucking with Russia's revenue stream. Elon stays on for a bit and then appoints a successor, just like he was always going to do, but pay attention to Tesla's next earning report, that's going to be a doozy. The tech behind ChatGPT, yeah, going to make super sophisticated cyber sex bots and simultaneously completely disrupt the education system. Heel turn from Hans Niemann, he becomes the bad boy of chess that everyone loves to hate. And maybe the war in Ukraine stops being a thing. That'd be good. Okay, that's it. And remember, the past is a memory, the future is forever, and don't let the bastards grind you down. I will see you in 2023.